It was an ordinary Tuesday morning at Greenview Bank, a modest establishment tucked into the heart of a bustling city. As sunlight streamed through the large glass windows, the quiet hum of daily operations filled the air. Clerks typed steadily at their computers, customers chatted softly in line, and the faint aroma of freshly brewed coffee wafted from the break room. The bank manager, Margaret Hollis, stood tall behind the counter, her sharp eyes surveying the floor with a sense of authority. Margaret prided herself on her professionalism. She ran a tight ship, and her staff respected her for her unwavering commitment to the rules. Before we start, smash the like and subscribe buttons for more updates. Margaret's morning routine had been seamless so far, with just the usual assortment of depositors, small business owners, and elderly regulars stopping by for assistance. She had just finished resolving a dispute over a wire transfer when she noticed a man walk through the doors. He was tall, dressed in simple jeans, a plain jacket, and a bright red hat with bold white lettering that read, "Make America Great Again." The sight of the hat instantly caught Margaret's attention. In recent years, the MAGA slogan had become a polarizing symbol, sparking debates, controversies, and heated discussions wherever it appeared. Margaret, a staunch progressive, felt her chest tighten at the sight. Her mind raced with judgments and assumptions about the man's political affiliations and character. The man approached the counter casually, tipping his hat slightly as he smiled. "Good morning," he said, his voice warm but unassuming. He placed a small stack of papers on the counter. "I'd like to make a transfer, please." Margaret forced a polite smile, her professionalism winning out over her personal feelings. "Of course. Can I see your ID?" she asked briskly, flipping through the papers he'd handed over. The man slid a driver's license across the counter. Margaret barely glanced at the name, Elon Musk. To her, it was just another name among the hundreds she encountered daily. She had no reason to suspect she was addressing one of the wealthiest and most influential people on the planet. After all, why would someone like Elon Musk be in a small local branch wearing a MAGA hat and standing in line like an average Joe? As she examined his ID, her unease grew. Margaret couldn't help but let her biases seep into her demeanor. She looked at him with a slight air of suspicion, her voice tight as she asked, "What exactly are you transferring this for?" The man's smile faltered slightly, but he remained calm. "It's a business matter," he replied, "just moving some funds around." Margaret's brows furrowed. Business matter or not, she felt an almost irrational compulsion to scrutinize him further. "I'm sorry, but I need more information. We have to be cautious these days, especially with large sums." Elon raised an eyebrow, his tone still even but tinged with surprise. "That's understandable. What kind of additional information do you need?" Margaret crossed her arms, signaling her disapproval. "It's not just about the transaction, Mr. Musk. We have a responsibility to maintain certain standards here. Frankly, I find it unusual for someone dressed like that to be making such a request." The room grew quieter. A few customers glanced over, sensing the tension. Elon's expression darkened, but he kept his composure. "I wasn't aware there was a dress code for financial transactions," he said coolly. Margaret felt her face flush. She had overstepped, but instead of backing down, her pride pushed her further. "It's not about a dress code," she said curtly. "It's about representing certain values. I don't think it's appropriate to wear symbols that might make other customers uncomfortable." Elon studied her for a moment, his sharp blue eyes narrowing slightly. "So let me get this straight," he said, his voice steady but firmer now. "You're refusing to help me because of a hat?" "I'm not refusing to help," Margaret replied quickly, though her tone betrayed her defensiveness. "I'm just saying that this bank has a reputation to uphold, and I don't think it's wise to—" Before she could finish, Elon held up a hand, cutting her off. He smiled again, but this time it was the smile of someone who knew more than he was letting on. "I think there's been a misunderstanding," he said. "Would you mind getting your district manager on the phone? I'd like to clarify something." Margaret blinked, taken aback. "The district manager? That won't be necessary," she said, though her confidence was starting to waver. "I insist," Elon said firmly. His calmness now carried an edge that made Margaret uneasy. Reluctantly, she stepped away to make the call. As she waited for the district manager to answer, Margaret's mind raced. She couldn't shake the nagging feeling that she had misjudged the man in front of her. But her resolve was strong, and she told herself she was simply doing her job, upholding the bank's standards and protecting its reputation. When the district manager finally answered, Margaret explained the situation in a clipped, sanitized version. "I have a customer here who's being difficult and making unusual requests," she said. "I thought it might be best to consult you before proceeding." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "What's the customer's name?" the district manager asked. Margaret glanced at the ID still sitting on the counter. "Elon Musk," she replied. The silence that followed was deafening. When the district manager finally spoke, his voice was a mixture of disbelief and urgency. "Margaret, are you serious? That's the Elon Musk, the owner of the bank. Whatever he's asking for, do it immediately." Margaret felt the blood drain from her face. "The owner of the bank?" she repeated, her voice barely above a whisper. "Yes!" the district manager snapped. "And if you've upset him, you'd better fix it now. I'll be down there shortly." The call ended abruptly, leaving Margaret reeling. She returned to the counter, her face pale and her hands trembling slightly. Elon was still standing there, watching her with an unreadable expression. "Is everything all right?" he asked, his tone polite but edged with irony. Margaret swallowed hard, forcing a tight smile. "Mr. Musk, I had no idea who you were. Please accept my sincerest apologies for the misunderstanding. Of course, we can process your transaction right away." Elon tilted his head, his gaze piercing. "It's not about the transaction anymore, is it?" he said. "It's about the way you treated me. How quickly you judged and dismissed me because of a piece of clothing. You didn't even bother to check who I was before making assumptions." Margaret opened her mouth to respond, but no words came. He was right, and she knew it. Her professionalism had been overshadowed by her biases, and now she was paying the price. Elon leaned in slightly, lowering his voice so only she could hear. "Here's the thing," he said. "I don't wear this hat to make a statement. I wear it to see how people treat me when they think I'm just an ordinary guy. And you? You failed the test." Margaret felt tears prick the corners of her eyes, but she blinked them away. "I'm so sorry," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "It was a terrible mistake. Please let me make it right." Elon studied her for a long moment before nodding slowly. "Everyone makes mistakes," he said. "What matters is how you learn from them. Process the transaction and let's move on." With shaking hands, Margaret completed the transfer. She worked quickly and efficiently, desperate to redeem herself. When she handed Elon his receipt, she couldn't bring herself to meet his eyes. "Thank you," she said softly. "And again, I'm so sorry." Elon took the receipt and gave her a small smile. "Consider this a lesson," he said. "Not just for you, but for everyone here. Don't judge people by appearances. You never know who they really are, or what they might own." As he turned to leave, the room seemed to hold its breath. Every staff member, every customer watched in stunned silence as the man in the MAGA hat walked out the door, his quiet power lingering in the air. Margaret stood frozen, her mind replaying the events over and over. She knew she had narrowly avoided disaster, but the lesson Elon had imparted would stay with her forever. From that day on, she vowed to treat every customer with the respect and fairness they deserved, no matter what they wore, or who she thought they were. As the door of the bank swung closed behind Elon Musk, the air in the building seemed to shift. Margaret Hollis stood rooted in place, her mind reeling. Whispers broke out among the staff and customers as they processed what had just transpired. The realization that the man she had dismissed and scrutinized was none other than the owner of the very bank sent a ripple of shock and disbelief through the room. The district manager arrived less than 10 minutes later, his face flushed from the hurried drive and the weight of his mounting anxiety. He stormed into Margaret's office without pausing to greet anyone. Margaret, still visibly shaken, followed him in and closed the door behind her. "What were you thinking?" he demanded, his voice a mixture of disbelief and anger. "Elon Musk, the man who practically owns half the world's technology infrastructure, walks into our branch, and you treat him like some common troublemaker? Do you have any idea how this could have gone?" Margaret sank into her chair, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. I know, she said, her voice trembling. "I misjudged him. It was a mistake, a terrible mistake." The district manager paced back and forth, rubbing his temples. "This is bigger than a mistake, Margaret. This could have cost us everything. The man controls the fate of this bank. One word from him, and he could shut down this branch or worse. He could pull his investments entirely." Margaret's stomach churned at the thought. She had worked at Greenview Bank for over a decade, climbing the ranks through sheer determination and hard work. The possibility of losing everything she had built because of a single moment of prejudice was almost too much to bear. "I'll write him an apology," she said quickly. "I'll call him personally if I have to. I'll do whatever it takes to make this right." The district manager stopped pacing and looked at her, his expression softening slightly. "You'd better," he said, "because if he decides to take this higher, it won't just be your job on the line. It'll be all of ours." As the district manager left the office, Margaret buried her face in her hands. She knew she had to act quickly, but how? She could hardly imagine what kind of apology would suffice for someone as influential and powerful as Elon Musk. Later that evening, after the bank had closed and the staff had gone home, Margaret sat at her desk, staring at a blank notepad. She tapped her pen against the paper, searching for the right words. She wanted to explain herself, to convey how deeply she regretted her actions, but everything she wrote felt hollow and insincere. Eventually, she decided to take a more personal approach. She opened her laptop and began typing an email. She poured her heart into the message, explaining the pressures of her role, her misguided assumptions, and her determination to learn from the experience. She promised to implement better training for her staff to ensure that no customer would ever be judged unfairly again. When she was finished, she read the email over several times before hitting send. The next morning, Margaret arrived at the bank earlier than usual, her nerves frayed from a sleepless night. She checked her inbox obsessively, hoping for a response from Elon Musk, but there was nothing. The hours crawled by, each one heavier with uncertainty than the last. It wasn't until the afternoon that the unexpected happened. A sleek black car pulled up in front of the bank, and out stepped a man in a tailored suit. He carried an air of quiet authority as he entered the building, glancing around briefly before approaching the counter. "I'm looking for Margaret Hollis," he said, his voice calm but firm. Margaret, who had been speaking with a colleague nearby, froze. She turned slowly, her heart pounding. "That's me," she said, stepping forward. "How can I help you?" The man extended a business card. "My name is Jonathan Reeve. I'm one of Mr. Musk's representatives. He received your email and wanted me to deliver a message." Margaret's stomach dropped. She took the card hesitantly, her fingers trembling. "A message?" she echoed. Jonathan nodded. "Mr. Musk appreciated your email and your willingness to take responsibility for your actions. He believes in second chances and has decided not to escalate the matter further. However, he has one condition." Margaret's pulse quickened. "What condition?" Jonathan's expression softened slightly. "Mr. Musk wants you to spearhead a new initiative within the bank, one focused on diversity, inclusion, and customer equity. He believes this is an opportunity for growth, not just for you, but for the entire organization." Margaret felt a wave of relief wash over her, tempered by the weight of the responsibility she was being given. I'd be honored," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "Please tell Mr. Musk that I won't let him down." Jonathan smiled faintly. "I'll pass along the message. Good luck, Miss Hollis." With that, he turned and left, leaving Margaret standing there, her mind racing with possibilities. The news of the initiative spread quickly through the bank. Margaret threw herself into the project with everything she had, determined to prove her worth. She held meetings with her staff, sought input from experts, and worked tirelessly to create a program that would set a new standard for how Greenview Bank treated its customers. Months passed and the initiative began to take shape. Margaret implemented new training programs, revised outdated policies, and introduced a customer feedback system to ensure that every voice was heard. The changes didn't happen overnight, but they were tangible, and they were making a difference. One day, as Margaret was reviewing the latest progress report, she received an unexpected call. The receptionist informed her that a visitor was waiting for her in the lobby. When Margaret stepped out, she was greeted by none other than Elon Musk himself. He was dressed differently this time. No MAGA hat, no casual attire. Instead, he wore a sleek black suit, his demeanor as commanding as ever. Margaret's breath caught in her throat as he approached her, a faint smile playing at the corners of his lips. "Mr. Musk," she said, her voice tinged with both surprise and nervousness. "I didn't expect to see you here." Elon nodded. "I wanted to see the progress for myself," he said. "I've been following the reports, and I have to say, I'm impressed. You've done good work." Margaret felt a swell of pride. "Thank you," she said. "I couldn't have done it without the support of my team, and without your faith in me." Elon's smile widened slightly. "Faith can be a powerful thing," he said, "but so can action. You took a difficult situation and turned it into an opportunity for growth. That's not something everyone can do." Margaret's cheeks flushed with gratitude. "I've learned a lot from this experience," she said. "Not just about my role, but about myself. And I owe that to you." Elon regarded her for a moment, his expression thoughtful. "You don't owe me anything," he said. "What matters is that you learned. That's what life is about. Learning, adapting, and doing better." As he turned to leave, Margaret felt a sense of closure. The man who had walked into her bank months ago wearing a polarizing hat was no longer a source of fear or regret. Instead, he had become a symbol of growth, transformation, and the power of second chances. From that day forward, Margaret continued to lead the Diversity and Inclusion Initiative with unwavering dedication. The The bank flourished under her guidance, earning accolades for its innovative approach to customer relations. And while the memory of that fateful encounter with Elon Musk never faded, it served as a constant reminder of the importance of humility, empathy, and the courage to admit one's mistakes. Elon Musk never returned to the branch, but his influence lingered in every corner of the building. For Margaret, his brief presence had been a turning point, a moment that changed her life, her career, and her perspective forever. And in the quiet hours of the morning, as she sipped her coffee and prepared for another day, she often found herself thinking back to that red hat and the man who wore it with unshakable confidence. Margaret Hollis's transformation didn't just change her approach to leadership, it began to reshape the very culture of Greenview Bank. While the Diversity and Inclusion Initiative was a visible marker of progress, its true impact reached far deeper. The incident with Elon Musk had sparked conversations not just within Margaret's branch but across the entire organization. People began to examine their own biases and practices, questioning long-held assumptions about professionalism, customer interactions, and the importance of empathy. To spearhead the initiative, Margaret formed a committee that included representatives from every level of the bank's hierarchy. Tellers, loan officers, IT specialists, and even janitorial staff were invited to participate. Margaret believed that the initiative would only succeed if it reflected the voices and experiences of everyone in the organization, not just those in leadership. The committee meetings were initially tense. Employees were hesitant to speak openly, unsure of how their opinions would be received. Margaret, determined to break the ice, began each meeting by sharing her own journey, the mistakes she had made, the lessons she had learned, and her commitment to fostering a more inclusive environment. Her vulnerability had a profound effect, and slowly, the walls began to come down. One of the earliest breakthroughs came from an unlikely source, a part-time teller named Kevin, who had been with the bank for less than a year. Kevin shared a story about a customer who had walked in wearing a hoodie and sneakers. The man had been treated dismissively by several staff members, only to later reveal that he was a venture capitalist scouting banks for a major partnership. Kevin's story mirrored Margaret's own experience with Elon Musk, driving home the point that appearances could be deceiving and that every customer deserved respect. As the weeks went on, the committee drafted a set of core principles to guide the bank's interactions with customers and one another. These principles emphasized respect, fairness, and a commitment to understanding individual needs and perspectives. Margaret ensured that these values weren't just words on a page, they were woven into every aspect of the bank's operations, from hiring practices to customer service protocols. The rollout of the new policies was met with mixed reactions. Some employees embraced the changes wholeheartedly, grateful for the opportunity to work in a more equitable and inclusive environment. Others were resistant, questioning the need for such drastic measures. Margaret tackled these challenges head-on, holding one-on-one conversations with skeptical staff members to address their concerns and explain the importance of the initiative. Meanwhile, the bank's customers began to notice the difference. The branch that had once been a place of rigid formality now exuded warmth and approachability. Staff members went out of their way to make every customer feel welcome, whether they were a millionaire investor or a single parent opening their first savings account. The change didn't just improve customer satisfaction, it attracted new business. As word spread about Greenview Bank's commitment to treating people with dignity and respect. The initiative's success caught the attention of the bank's corporate leadership, who invited Margaret to present her findings at the annual company retreat. Nervous but determined, Margaret prepared meticulously, compiling data, customer testimonials, and feedback from her staff. When the day of the presentation arrived, she stood before a room filled with executives and colleagues from across the organization, her heart pounding. Margaret began her presentation with the story of Elon Musk's visit, using it as a springboard to discuss the broader lessons she had learned. She spoke candidly about her own biases, the changes she had implemented, and the measurable impact those changes had on the bank's performance. Her honesty and passion resonated deeply with the audience, and by the time she finished, she received a standing ovation. The presentation marked a turning point, not just for Margaret, but for Greenview Bank as a whole. The corporate leadership decided to expand her initiative across all branches, appointing Margaret as the head of a newly created Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion DEI department. It was a role Margaret hadn't sought but was eager to embrace, seeing it as an opportunity to make a lasting difference. In her new position, Margaret traveled extensively, visiting branches across the country to share her experiences and help implement the new policies. She met employees from all walks of life, each with their own stories and perspectives. These interactions deepened her understanding of the challenges and opportunities facing the banking industry, and she became a passionate advocate for systemic change. One of her most memorable visits was to a small rural branch in the Midwest, where she met a manager named Ruth. Ruth had been with the bank for over 30 years and was initially skeptical of the DEI initiative. "I've seen a lot of programs like this come and go," Ruth said during their first meeting. "They make a lot of noise, but nothing really changes." Margaret didn't argue or try to convince Ruth on the spot. Instead, she listened, asking questions about Ruth's experiences and the unique challenges her branch faced. Over the course of her visit, Margaret worked alongside Ruth and her team, helping them adapt the core principles of the initiative to their specific needs. By the end of the week, Ruth admitted that she had been wrong to doubt Margaret's intentions. "You're the real deal," she said with a smile. "I think this might actually work." Margaret's work wasn't without its challenges. There were moments of frustration and setbacks, times when progress felt agonizingly slow. But she remained steadfast, drawing strength from the knowledge that she was part of something larger than herself. She also received unexpected encouragement from Elon Musk, who occasionally sent her brief but supportive messages. One email simply read, "Keep going, you're making a difference." Those words meant more to Margaret than she could express. Though she rarely spoke of him publicly, Elon's quiet support was a constant reminder of how far she had come and the importance of the work she was doing. She often thought back to their brief encounter at the bank, marveling at how a single moment of conflict had led to such profound transformation. Over time, Margaret's efforts began to attract attention outside the banking industry. She was invited to speak at conferences, write articles for trade publications, and even contribute to a book on leadership. Her story became a powerful example of how adversity could be turned into an opportunity for growth, inspiring others to confront their own biases and strive for meaningful change. As the years went on, Margaret's legacy grew. The DEI initiative became a cornerstone of Greenview Bank's identity, setting a standard that other financial institutions sought to emulate. The branch where it all began was renamed in Margaret's honor, a testament to the impact she had made. For Margaret, the most rewarding part of her journey was the knowledge that she had helped create a culture where everyone felt valued and respected. She often reflected on the lessons she had learned along the way, lessons that had reshaped not just her career but her entire outlook on life. And though she never saw Elon Musk again, she carried his influence with her always. A reminder that even the most unexpected encounters could spark a chain of events that changed the world. Margaret Hollis's story did not end with the success of her diversity and inclusion initiative or her rise to prominence within Greenview Bank. Her journey continued to unfold in ways she never anticipated, challenging her to adapt, grow, and innovate further. In the years following the establishment of her role as head of the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion DEI department, Margaret became a central figure in redefining how Greenview Bank approached its role in the broader community. She had always believed that a bank wasn't just a place to store money or secure loans, it was a cornerstone of the community, capable of driving social change and economic empowerment. One of Margaret's most ambitious projects was the launch of the Greenview Opportunity Program GOP, a comprehensive initiative designed to provide financial literacy, education, mentorship, and accessible resources to underserved communities. Margaret recognized that many people avoided banks out of fear or mistrust, often stemming from negative experiences or a lack of understanding about how the financial system worked. The GOP aimed to change that. Margaret spearheaded the program by assembling a team of passionate individuals, including financial advisors, educators, and community leaders. Together, they developed workshops and seminars tailored to various demographics, from young adults learning to manage their first paychecks to retirees planning for their golden years. The program also included one-on-one mentorship for small business owners, helping them secure loans, navigate regulatory hurdles, and build sustainable enterprises. To ensure the program reached those who needed it most, Margaret partnered with local schools, churches, and community centers. She personally visited neighborhoods that were often overlooked by larger institutions, sitting down with residents to hear their stories and understand their challenges. These interactions deepened her resolve to make the financial system more inclusive. The GOP quickly became a resounding success, earning praise from both the community and the media. Local news outlets ran stories about families who had been able to buy their first homes, entrepreneurs who had turned their dreams into thriving businesses, and students who had learned the importance of saving and budgeting. Margaret's vision of a more equitable financial system was becoming a reality, but the work wasn't without its challenges. Some critics argued that the program was too costly and would hurt the bank's bottom line. Others dismissed it as a publicity stunt. Margaret faced these criticisms head-on, presenting data that showed how the program was not only transforming lives, but also generating long-term benefits for the bank. Customers who participated in the GOP were more likely to remain loyal to Greenview Bank, take out additional products, and recommend the institution to others. Margaret also faced resistance from within the organization. Some senior executives were skeptical of her approach, viewing her focus on community engagement as a distraction from the bank's core business. Margaret used these moments as opportunities to educate and persuade, demonstrating how the program aligned with the bank's mission and values. Her persistence paid off. Over time, even her staunchest critics began to see the value of her work. The Greenview Opportunity Program became a model for other banks, and Margaret was invited to share her insights with industry leaders at national conferences. She used these platforms not to celebrate her achievements, but to challenge others to rethink their approach to banking. While the GOP was perhaps her most visible accomplishment, Margaret's influence extended far beyond the program itself. She worked tirelessly to create a workplace culture that celebrated diversity, fostered collaboration, and encouraged innovation. Under her leadership, Greenview Bank implemented new policies to ensure equitable hiring practices, provided ongoing training on unconscious bias, and established employee resource groups to support underrepresented voices. These changes had a profound impact on the bank's workforce. Employees reported feeling more valued and empowered, leading to higher job satisfaction and lower turnover rates. The bank also began attracting top talent from diverse backgrounds, further strengthening its reputation as a forward-thinking institution. Margaret's efforts didn't go unnoticed. She was featured in major publications, received numerous awards for her contributions to the financial industry, and was even named one of the most influential women in banking by a leading trade journal. Yet despite her growing fame, Margaret remained grounded. She often reminded herself of the lessons she had learned from Elon Musk's unexpected visit and the humility it had instilled in her. In the midst of her professional success, Margaret also found time to reflect on her personal growth. The incident with Elon Musk had forced her to confront her own biases and assumptions, a process that had been both uncomfortable and enlightening. She became a vocal advocate for self-awareness, urging others to examine their own beliefs and challenge the narratives they had internalized. If you liked this video, please give it a like and subscribe to our channel. Also, leave your comments below and tell us. What are your thoughts on a bank manager refusing to serve Elon Musk in a MAGA hat? We want to hear from you. Thank you for watching and see you next time.